שלום לכולם, ברוכים הבאים, אני שמח לארח אתכם כאן הערב לעוד ראיון בסדרת הראיונות שלנו עם מנהיגים שמשנים את העולם, והערב אני מאוד מאוד שמח ונרגש לראיין כאן את איוון מייזנר. איוון הוא בעצם המייסד של B&I, ארגון הנטוורקינג הגדול ביותר בעולם, אז תכף כאן תשמעו אותו ותשמעו עליו, ואני מאמין שאתם תוכלו להפיק הרבה מאוד דרך עבור עצמכם ועבור העסק שלכם מהרעיון הזה. נמצאת איתנו גם הערב גם ירדן נוי, מנכ"ל B&I ישראל. אהלן ירדן.
שלום, שלום.
אז ברוכה הבאה גם כן לרעיון הזה כאן עם איוון, ואני אשמח ירדן שככה אולי עוד לפני שאנחנו מתחילים את הרעיון עם איוון, שתציגי קצת את עצמך, מה לעשות B&I בישראל, ואת איוון כמובן.
אוקיי, אז ערב טוב לכולם. שמי ירדן נוי, ואני לפני 13 שנה יצאתי לעצמאות, מלהיות שכירה לעצמאית, והגעתי בעצם ל-B&I דרך איזושהי כתבה בעיתון שראיתי, לא היה לי מושג ירוק לאן אני מגיעה, והגעתי באמת למפגש ראשון, פגשתי שם אנשים שהיו בדיוק באותו מצב כמוני, עצמאים, כולנו הרגשנו שאנחנו מאוד מאוד לבד, ופתאום ביחד הזה פתח לנו המון אפשרויות. התחושה הזאת של עצמאי, שבעצם החבר הכי טוב שלו זה טלפון סלולרי ומחשב, בעצם שהוא נמצא ביחד עם אנשים, מאוד מאוד משתנה. ולא רק זה, זה אנשים שמגיעים בשביל לעזור אחד לשני לפתוח את הדלתות, ופתאום יש כמה עשרות של אנשי שיווק שלא הכרתי לפני כן, שמאוד מאוד רוצים לעזור לי, וכל מה שהם רוצים בתמורה זה שאני אעזור להם לפתוח דלתות ולפתוח הזדמנויות. לפני 11 שנה נוצרה גם לי הזדמנות, ובעצם יחד עם שותף, סם שוורץ, שהוא איש עסקים, לקחנו את הזכיינות כאן בארץ, והיום אנחנו מפעילים 56 קבוצות עסקיות שנפגשות מדי שבוע, מאשקלון בדרום ועד קריית שמונה בצפון, כ-1,700 נשות ואנשי עסקים שעושים עסקים כל שבוע, ואנחנו גם עוקבים אחרי התוצאות שלהם, ואני שמחה לבשר שלמרות המצב הכלכלי הלא מזהיר שקורה גם בעולם וגם בארצנו הקטנטונת, אז בשנת 2014 חברי B&I הצהירו על כך שהם הכניסו לכיסם יותר מ-113 מיליון ש"ח, אני אחזור על זה שוב, זה יותר מ-113 מיליון ש"ח לכיסם בלי עמלות לארגון, הכל לכיס שלהם, וזה אך ורק מהפעילות שלהם ב-B&I, בלי קשר לצורה שבה הם משווקים את עצמם באמצעים אחרים. זה ככה ממש בקצרה.
אוקיי, נשמח שתציגי לנו ככה בהיכרות שלך את דוקטור מייזנר ואת ההיכרות שלך איתו.
Okay, hello Ivan.
Hello, I was getting worried that you were going to expect me to speak in Hebrew and I was in big trouble.
Well, I'm sure you will do fine also with this. I just want to tell everyone that I'm really privileged to know Dr. Ivan Meisner, B&I founder for the last 11 years. You know, when not many people even knew what networking means. Yes, they always tell networking, that's a computer, right? Yeah. So I think that the fact that B&I is so successful is a lot to do with Ivan Meisner's vision and his leadership. I learned so much from him. He has so much knowledge. He knows how to motivate people. He's number one in telling stories. You should know that, number one. I always ruined when I tell a joke, and you are such a wonderful teller of stories. And I find myself quoting things that you are saying, you know, on a daily basis. One of my favorites is no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I really try to live in that feeling, and also B&I motto, which is givers gain. So I want to thank you, Ivan, for B&I and for the opportunity. B&I absolutely changed my life for the best. And I look forward to hearing you today because I learn from you each time I listen to you, and I listen to you for the last 11 years, everything you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate those kind words. But let me tell you, BNI Israel is successful today, not because of me, but because of Sam Schwartz and you. You in particular there in Israel have really made a difference for a lot of business professionals and helped many business people build their business, especially during some tough economic times globally. So you're doing a great job in there, and you're helping to change the way the world does business, and I appreciate you. Eran, it's very nice to finally meet you. I appreciate the invitation to do this Google Hangout with you.
Thank you. So, Ivan, I would appreciate if you can, start at the beginning. Today BNI is a global organization, huge organization, and with many business owners and business people who get a lot of business from the activity. So maybe you can start with that. How this all started and how you see this activity going.
Yeah, well, listen, I would like to tell you that I had this vision of an international organization with chapters all over the world, but the truth is I needed some referrals for my consulting practice. I was a management consultant, and I put together a small group of people to help me get referrals, and these are people I trusted and I wanted to help them. So it was a mutual relationship. We got together, we passed referrals. From the very beginning, it was one person per profession because I wanted a safe environment where competitors weren't there. And someone came to that first group after a couple of months, and she couldn't join because of a conflict. There was somebody else in her profession, and she asked me if I would help her open up another chapter. Now, don't tell anybody this, but and I don't put this in my this isn't in my book, Giver's Gain, but I actually said to her, no, this isn't what I do. I don't want to open up a second group. I'm a business consultant, and I just have this one chapter. And she argued that, hey, look, this is sort of consulting. You're helping me in my business. So I said, okay, and we opened up a second chapter. We had 25 people come. 2 of them couldn't join because of a conflict with the other 24 or 23, and both of them said, wow, this is great. I could get a ton of business out of this. Would you help me open up my own group? And I said, no, this isn't what I do. I'm a business consultant. They made the same argument, and I opened up a couple more chapters, one on the west side of Los Angeles. And we were off to the races. We ended up opening 20 chapters the first year by accident. And it was really at that point that I realized I had struck a chord in the business community. We don't teach business networking in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. We don't teach this. And so business people are hungry for word-of-mouth business, for referral business, and most people don't know how to do it. So we provide an environment for them to work together, to learn how to do it, and to build their business. We now have 7,100 groups in 60 countries around the world. It has become Mr. Toad's wild ride.
So it took 20 chapters until you were convinced that you're no longer a business consultant?
Yeah, well, actually, I was doing both businesses simultaneously. I did that for almost 4 years. We were up to 80 chapters. It was 1989, and I finally said, look, actually what happened was someone said to me for the 1,000th time, so what do you do? Are you a business consultant, or do you run this BNI thing? And I said this just one too many times. I said, consulting is my vocation. BNI is my avocation. It's what I love. And I said that one too many times, and I started thinking, why am I not doing what I love full time? And that was the deciding factor for me. Was I decided to sell off my consulting business in 1989 and just do BNI full time. And so it took 3 or 4 years to get to that point. But I did have a plan after the first year to take this and make it much larger.
Wow, amazing. So BNI is much about networking and making connections and recommending others. I want to ask you in favor of all of those who are listening and watching us now. how do you actually make, as a businessman, how do you actually make others recommend on your business?
It's really all about developing deep relationships with other people. Networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. It's about cultivating relationships with other business professionals. If your network is a mile wide and an inch deep, it will never be very successful. So it needs to actually go deep with some of those relationships and to get to know people and trust people. And it's from that trust that you generate referrals. Trust in a structured referral process. That's the way you generate referrals. And that's one of the reasons why in BNI we meet every week. It seems like a lot, but the truth is you're not going to build relationships with people unless you're in front of them on a regular basis, getting to know who they are, and most importantly, know how to refer them. So part of the process is learning how to teach people to refer business to you, because it doesn't come naturally. I can't refer business to you until I understand who you are and what you do. Make sense?
Perfect sense. So if I get it right, so the whole thing is, first of all, building the personal connection between people, cultivating and nurturing this relationship, and then referrals actually come by nature, I assume, right?
Well, nature and nurture. You got to work it to build those relationships. Really, the foundation of everything I teach is based on a concept called the VCP process. It stands for visibility, credibility, profitability. It's a chronological process. So it begins with visibility. You have to be visible in the community. People have to know who you are and what you do. Then you move to credibility, where people know who you are, they know what you do, and they know you're good at it. Then and only then can you get to profitability, where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it, and they're willing to pass you referrals on an ongoing reciprocal basis. So moving from visibility to credibility, credibility to profitability takes time, and it takes effort. But if you do both of those things, you can generate the majority of your business through referrals, and I think it's quite possible to do that. And I see that with many businesses all around the world.
So personal connection is very important. So in today's world, with all the the social media, with Facebook, then LinkedIn, Google Plus, and Twitter, and probably a dozen more which I forgot. How people say, so why do I need to network? I get like 5,000 friends on Facebook,
right.
6,000 friends on LinkedIn, right. So I'm sure you have something to say about that.
Oh, I have a lot to say about that. First of all, I love online networking. I'm a believer. If you go to Facebook, you'll see I have a public page with almost 30,000 followers. I've got my private page. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm a believer in social networking. To me, though, it's not a matter of either or. It's both and. It's both face-to-face networking and online networking or social networking that I think you need to do to build a powerful personal network. Let me tell you a quick story. Yarden said I'm good at stories, so let me tell you a good story. A few years ago, I was in Stockholm, and I was doing an interview with the big newspaper there in Stockholm. And this young kid, he was, at what, my age, he was a young kid. He was in his early 20s. And he was the reporter for the newspaper. And he was running late to get to me because of traffic, and it took him an hour and a half to get to me. And he spent the first 5 minutes, no joke, I'm not kidding, he spent the first 5 minutes berating me, giving me a bad time for running what he called the buggy whip business of the networking industry. That's what he called it. And what he meant was, we now have automobiles. We don't have horse and carriage. And when automobiles replaced horse and carriage, the buggy whip business went out of business, most of them. Right. And he said face-to-face networking it's the buggy whip business. It's going to go out of business. And by the way, this was about 5 years ago. I'll come back to that. And he said, I said to him, so why are you doing this interview if you feel that we're the buggy whip business? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, why are you doing the interview? He said, well, my boss told me I had to. I said, okay, I get it. You're not impressed with the topic, but why did you drive out here to do the interview? Because it took you an hour and a half to get here. It's going to take you longer to get back because traffic's going to be worse. Why did you drive out here? And Eran, without even skipping a beat, he looked at me and he said, oh, well, because a face-to-face interview is always better. And that's what I did, was I just went like this, and he went, oh, I get it. I said, yeah, look, there's something about being face-to-face. Now, the nice thing about technology, we can do interviews now via Google Hangout or Skype or whatever, so we can connect sort of face-to-face. But when you're doing an interview, there's nothing better than shaking someone's hand and having a conversation with them. Face-to-face, it's better than the telephone, it's better than email. And until there's a day when we can have 30 or 40 people meeting, maybe holographs. You remember Star Wars, where they had the holographic images? Yeah, there's all the Jedi Knights, and there was a holographic image of a Jedi, and then a real Jedi, and then a couple of holographic images. Until we can have meetings like that, where everyone can be in a virtual meeting together, then I don't think face-to-face networking is going to be replaced. And by the way, when we get there, I want to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. Just saying.
With the sword.
Yeah, that's it. That's me.
So you know what kind of recommendations or tips you can give to people who are like starting, thinking about this whole networking thing, how to build it, how to build the relationships with others.
Yeah, a couple of things. There are different types of networks that you should consider to participate in, and online networks are absolutely one of them. One of the things that I recommend is that they're a great way to stay in touch with people, especially once you've made contact. It's a great way to stay connected to them. But you also want to take a look at face-to-face networks that are local. Organizations like a Chamber of Commerce or a professional association where they get many businesses together in a mixer environment. That's a great kind of network. Service clubs like Rotary, Lions, Kiwanis, these are great kinds of networks for people to participate in locally. Obviously, groups like BNI, where one person per profession and the focus is on generating business. So I recommend that you diversify your networks. Pick 2 or 3 types of networks, face-to-face networks that you're going to participate in, and then add to that regular activity on online networks like LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, and then you have a comprehensive networking strategy, and it's really about building a comprehensive networking strategy to build your business through referrals.
And I think what I see is that many people kind of sometimes struggle with going to others and introducing themselves, or starting the conversation. You have any kind of insights about how to do that more easy?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's a lot that I've written about with this. When you walk into a room, the first thing that you can do is assess the way people are standing. Literally, take a look at the way they're standing, because it makes it much easier to strike up conversations with people if you can assess the room. So, looking at it from the God view, you're up above looking down. Okay, you're up above looking down. If you see 2 people standing like this, face to face, talking to each other, it's very hard to step into that conversation and meet people. However, if you have 2 people that are standing slightly askew, like this, it's very easy to fill that spot, come on in and have a conversation. Or if you have 3 people talking, it's sort of like a triangle. This is called a closed 2. That's called a closed 3. These are the technical graphics that I've got for you. So that's a closed 3. An open 3 would look like a U. So an open 3 would be almost like a U shape. So the first thing to do is assess the room to look to see who's standing individually that you could introduce yourself to, or who's in those open 2s or open 3s, so that you can kind of slide in and start a conversation. Now, what do you do when you're actually in that open 3 and you start to talk to people? I think a good networker has 2 ears and 1 mouth and should use them both proportionately. You should, really, a good networker is like a good interviewer. It's like an interview. You ask questions and get the other person to respond. You're asking me great questions and you're giving me an opportunity to elaborate. That is what makes a great networker. Ask questions and allow the other person to elaborate. You do that and let them talk about their business, and then they're much more likely to reciprocate. The problem with networking groups is that many people are going there using networking as a face-to-face cold calling opportunity. So they go there and go, "Hi, my name's Ivan, let's do business." And they try to jump right into sales. And that's a bad way to network. It's a horrible way to network. It's a mercenary way to network. And I don't believe that works at all. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, perfectly. You know, I've seen, I've completely seen what you say, what you mentioned. You know, people jumping on you and start trying to sell already.
Yeah, you feel like you need to go get a shower afterwards. You know, let me tell you one other real quick story. I was speaking in London and had almost 1,000 people in the audience, and I tried something out. It was a lot of fun. I said to them, it was a networking event, and I was the keynote speaker, and I said to them, "How many of you there, raise your hands if you're hoping, just maybe, possibly, to sell something today?" I had 1,000 people raise their hands. Everyone was like, "Yeah, I'm here, I'm networking, I want to sell." I said, "Great, thanks. Second question, raise your hands. How many of you are here today hoping to possibly buy something today?" No one raised their hands. Not one single person. Eran, this is what I call the networking disconnect. People show up at networking events wanting to sell, but nobody's there to buy.
Right.
So why go? You go to work your way through the VCP process. Visibility, credibility, profitability.
So what I sense what you're saying, that basically is that networking is more like building a longer-term relationship, and seeding the seeds for a longer term. It's not for the immediate sale.
That's correct. It is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint. Mm-hmm. And most people use it as a sprint, and they burn out. And of course, they say, "Well, this networking thing doesn't work." And it's because they're out there hunting, not farming. They're not cultivating relationships, and they're not taking their time to get to credibility.
Right. And making the first connection, assuming all the shapes and all that, I've got in front of someone else. Finally, I got over all of my fears and my self-talk and all of that, and I got in front of someone. Then, how do you start the conversation? What do you do? How do you present yourself correctly to create this relationship? Well,
first of all, I recommend that you ask them questions, like we were talking about. Get them to open up. And there are a number of questions that you can ask, but it's mostly just open-ended questions to get them to talk about their business. Now, let's assume you've done that. Now it's your chance to talk about yourself. And they will almost always say, "So tell me about what you do." I recommend that you have prepared something called a unique selling proposition, something that really gets their attention fairly quickly. There's a good one that I really like by the Referral Institute, and a unique selling proposition should be very brief, 12 words or so. And theirs is exactly 12 words. It's, I help people, in the Referral Institute, they say, "I help people work less, make more, and create referrals for life." The key there is create referrals for life. Now, here's a concept that your listeners might like. When you give a unique selling proposition, you not only want to hear what they say, because they may say, "Oh, tell me more," or "What does that mean? Explain that." That doesn't necessarily tell you whether the unique selling proposition is working or not. So look for visual cues. A good friend of mine, Samantha Horn, she has this concept that I love, just love. She calls it the eyebrow test. So that when you use a unique selling proposition, look at their eyebrows. Okay? So if you say, I help people work less, make more, and create referrals for life, look at their eyebrows. If their eyebrows go up, you got their attention. It's like, oh, tell me more. Okay? Versus down. So if you say, we help people create referrals for life. Oh, tell me more. Now, same words, but different inflection with the voice, and you see their eyebrows. If their eyebrows go down, you've confused them. They don't know what you're talking about. If their eyebrows go up, you've got their interest. So you use a unique selling proposition that's very brief, and you watch for visual cues to tell whether it's working, whether you've confused them or you've got their attention. And if you've got their attention, then you would go in a different direction than if you've just confused them. Find a unique selling proposition that generally gets their attention, and then you're off to the races, and you get to talk a little bit more about what you do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. Perfect sense. I know that one of the things that you do in BNI meetings, that I have actually, my wife was in BNI for years. She was in the team that was building one of the chapters here in Israel. And I know that you have this 60-second introduction. Right, the 60-second introduction. So, what are the key concepts? It's also similar to what you said about the unique seller proposition, but it's a bit longer. And I've seen many people who kind of miss this 60 minutes introduction because they don't do it well. What will be your take on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. When you're talking about a weekly presentation like we do in BNI, it's very important to be laser specific. Specific is terrific when you're talking about a weekly presentation. The last thing you want to do is say the same thing over and over and over again. I'm a printer. I can do full service printing. Whatever kind of printing you need, I can do. That's a waste of breath. That doesn't do any good. Instead, you want to get laser specific. The more specific you are, the better. You're trying. When you're in a group that's doing weekly presentations like BNI, you have to remember that you're trying to train a sales force, not close a sale. So if you're training your referral partners, that's a different kind of presentation. And so you want to hone in on a specific product or service or the benefits of a product or service and talk about that one little piece that week, and the next week is something else, and the next week is something else, so that over the course of a year, you've given a very thorough outline on the kinds of things that you do. This is counterintuitive to what business people think. They think they should tell people everything they do so that they know the whole big picture. The problem is they won't remember specifics. They won't think of you because you haven't given them anything to remember. For example, I have found sometimes the best way to get a referral is to be so crazy specific that people, they just don't think it would work. Give you an example. We have an exercise in BNI that we do sometimes. It's called a reciprocity ring, and people are supposed to stand up and give the name and company name of someone they've been trying to get through to, but haven't been able to get past the secretary or the assistant. And it's always funny to watch. I remember one of the first times I watched it, we went around the room and someone stood up and she thought it was a stupid idea. She didn't really want to do it. And I kind of pushed her to do it, and she said, fine. You want a name? I'll give you a name. I want to meet Marty Rodriguez. Marty Rodriguez is the #1 Century 21 real estate agent in the United States for the last 10 years in a row. And I can't get past the secretary, can't get past the assistant, never been able to do it. Now Marty's not easy to get to unless you want to sell a house, a big house. And so we went around the room and we said, does anyone know someone who knows Marty? And this woman stood up. Her name was Sally. And Sally looked to the woman who was asking for Marty, and Sally invited Janet, the woman who was asking for Marty. Her name was Janet. Sally invited Janet to BNI. They were close friends. Sally and Janet knew each other for years. Sally stood up and said, Janet, Marty's my sister-in-law. Janet said, oh my goodness, why didn't you ever tell me that? What do you think Sally said?
You didn't ask me.
You never asked. That's exactly what she said. You never asked. So what's crazy is, and I see this over and over and over again, when you're laser specific about what you're looking for, with a group of people who trust you, so first you have to build the trust and credibility. Now when you have credibility, then when you're laser specific, you're much more likely to get the referral. And I could give you one story after another about how being laser specific actually gets you the referral. But it's all about building that credibility first.
And I think, you know, as listening to you, I think that some people maybe have some kind of, you know, internal issue of asking.
Yeah. Get over it. I mean, really, you know, if you're out there networking, your goal is to get business. What tends to happen is people are too aggressive in the way they're asking. And so what you're trying to do for the most part is bring them back down. Build the relationship first, then ask for business. On the other hand, you have some people who don't want to ask for business, and that's something that you need to work through. But look at it this way. You know, you're not necessarily just asking for business. These are people who know you and trust you. When you give a referral, you give a little bit of your reputation away. If you give a good referral, it enhances your reputation. If you give a bad referral, it hurts your reputation. So you want to go into it making sure to service the people who give you a referral. So let's say you give me a referral and you give me Yardan as a referral. If I do a good job for Yardan, not only do I make her happy, but I make you happy. Because if I do a bad job for her, that reflects poorly on you. So I am actually not only helping Yardan, I'm helping to edify you by showing that you have good contacts that can help your clients, your customers, your friends. And so it's not just a win-win, it's a win-win-win if it's done right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, actually it made me think that actually this interview was created by Eran.
Yeah. Very, very true. And so I better do a good job, or else I'm going to reflect badly on the referrer.
You're doing fine.
All right, it's good to know I passed the audition.
So I want to ask you, Ivan, how do you see the future of networking? You know, how it looks for networking?
Oh, listen, I think, you know, I mentioned that I would come back to the last 5 years, because that interview was done 5 years ago with that young man in Stockholm. BNI and networking in general is growing dramatically. In the last 5 years, we've opened thousands of chapters of BNI. So I see the future of networking, face-to-face networking, being very strong. You know, the internet really got rolling in about 1996. So for BNI, the first 11 years, we opened 500 chapters. From 1985 to 1996, we had 500 groups. But from 1996 to 2007, we went from 500 groups to 5,000 groups. So when people say the internet is affecting face-to-face networking, I say, yes, it is. It's helping it dramatically. Because in the first 11 years, we had 500 groups, but in the second 11 years, we had 5,000 groups. And in the last 5 years, we've opened, 6 years, we've opened thousands of chapters. So I see the future of face-to-face networking as very strong. Years ago, there was a book written by Alvin Toffler. I think he wrote a book called Future Shock. And he's talking about the future, and this was done in the 80s, and he was talking about what's going to happen in the 2000s. And he used a phrase that we're moving towards a high-tech, high-touch society, that the more technologically advanced we become, the more the more personable, the more important the personal connection becomes. Eran, we're there. We have now arrived there. Technology has advanced amazingly in the last 10 years, 15 years. And I think it's more important than ever to have that personal connection using technology as a tool. And so I see groups like BNI as being very strong in the future.
Okay. So, I want to ask you, you've been in business world for quite some time.
Yeah.
And what kind of principles do you have for business owners, building their business, especially someone who begin building their businesses?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and there are some points that I like to talk about when I'm asked this question. And it's funny because now BNI is 30 years old, and I'm getting asked this question probably a lot more than I did years ago. And there's a few things that I was not taught in business school that I think are lessons that I've learned that are really critical to the success of any business. Here's one of them, and I certainly never got this in business school, and I think it's the most important lesson that I've learned in business. Do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times. What happens is business people get caught up chasing bright, shiny objects. I have this for my speeches when I'm talking about bright, shiny objects. So I'll stand there and I'll say, I am not a bright, shiny object. I'm a great idea. Let's do bumper stickers. What a great way to build your business. People get caught up on these crazy ideas, and they don't do the fundamentals that have worked consistently for others. Instead, they're looking for some quick fix, some magic bullet, some magic pill to take to be successful. I have found that the secret to success without hard work is still a secret. It doesn't exist. And it's about doing 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times. When people get that, I think they've got the beginnings of the foundation of a successful business. But there's more. Okay. So here's one that everybody always says, but let me give it a little bit of a spin that might help a little bit. You got to set goals. If you want to be successful in business, you have to set goals. Everybody tells you that. But here's my spin on that. Two key factors. I think when you set goals, you need to do them at 3 levels. You need to do it at what I'd call the floor. No matter what, you're going to hit this. If you don't hit this, you shouldn't be in business anymore. You got to hit that. Then there's your target. That's the number that you really, really want to hit, that target number, and you should be able to hit that. And then there's your celebration number. The number that you need to go out and have a big party if you hit that. Okay, so 3 different levels of goals that you should set when you're doing goals. What people do is they tend to set one level of goals. Often, by the way, it's a really high level. Their party level, their celebration level, and when they don't hit it, then they're depressed. I'd recommend that you set 3 levels so that if you at least go past that floor, you know that you're going in the right direction. As a rule, you want to hit that target. But if you can hit the celebration level, that's fantastic. So 3 levels. But here's the other part that people don't mention. It's very important that you reverse engineer your goals. Reverse engineer them. So if you set a goal, let's just take the target number. To hit a certain amount of revenue, or for us it maybe open up a certain number of chapters by the end of the year, you have to reverse engineer it. So you say, okay, in 12 months, by the end of the year, I want to be at this number. So where should I be in November? Where should I be in October? Where should I be? And you just back it up all the way to the first of the year. And so you reverse engineer it. So you're constant, and then you have to check regularly to make sure that you are on track for the achievement of those goals on a monthly basis. Let me give you one other little tidbit. Lessons I've learned in being in business for 30 years. Ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. Let me repeat that. Ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. This is important, particularly when you're hiring people. I've hired people that on paper were perfect, absolutely perfect, but they didn't really care. You know, they weren't really motivated. They weren't really excited, and they were a lousy employee. On the other hand, I've hired people who were on fire. They didn't have a ton of experience, but they were a sponge. They were willing to learn anything. I would much rather have somebody who I have to teach, but they're on fire and they're willing to learn, than somebody who knows it all, but they're not on fire. Because it's about attitude, and they don't have the right attitude, and I don't have time to send them back to mom to get retrained on attitude. So ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. 6 things 1,000 times. Don't follow bright, shiny objects and reverse engineer your goals.
So you're basically saying that, you know, need to look for people with passion and energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you should be working with people with passion and energy. Not just your employees, but the people that you surround yourself. Here's another thing that mom got right when we were being raised, and that is you become the people you hang out with. You know,
right.
I don't know about your mom. She probably did it too. My mom was like, I don't want you hanging out with that Johnny boy. He's a bad influence, right? And so you become the people that you hang out with. And so if you hang out with successful people, as an adult, if you hang out with successful people, motivated people, excited people, you become more successful, motivated, and excited. On the other hand, if you hang out with a bunch of losers or people who are constantly whining and complaining about how bad things are, you get sucked into that and you whine and complain just like everyone else.
Okay. I got here a question from one of our listeners.
Yeah.
And he's asking, what is the best way to build credibility in a networking group?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a fantastic question for whoever asked that. First of all, it takes time. So there is something we call the time confidence curve. The time confidence curve. So imagine an axis with time and confidence, that it takes a certain amount of time before people have confidence in your ability to provide a quality product or service. So the answer to the question is a little bit dependent on the profession that the person who's asking the question is in. If he's a florist, the time confidence curve is very short. If he's a printer, it's a little longer. If he's a real estate agent, it's longer. If he's a financial planner, investing retirement income, it's off the scale. It takes a long time to develop that confidence. So you have to understand what profession you're in and understand the time confidence curve. The other thing is, and this is a little bit of a surprising answer, people will have more confidence in you when they see you operate in some way. So let's say you're in a business that takes a while to develop confidence. Volunteer to be in a leadership role in the organization that you belong to. Why? Because that gets you in front of people. You're talking to everyone. They see you operate, and then you better do a good job. And that's important. If you do a good job in the role that you take on as a volunteer, people look at you and they go, wow, he's really good at that. He's probably good at being a financial planner too. So it kind of it rubs off on your reputation, rubs off when they see you in a different role but doing a great job, and they make this connection that you're a quality business professional, so you're probably quality as a financial planner as well. It's something that I didn't expect to see when I first started BNI, but over time I've seen it more and more and more. So there's a few ways to give it some consideration and thought on building credibility. Here's one other suggestion. If you're going to a group like BNI where you're there regularly, the people who have used your business, ask them to give a thorough testimonial at one of the meetings where they stand up. And in BNI, we do that every week. You give a testimonial for someone else. Ask them to give a testimonial for you if you've done a good job for them. And that helps raise your credibility. You know, I can talk all day about how good I am, but that only goes so far. If you talk about how good I am. Yarden was very gracious in her introduction of me. And I thoroughly appreciate that very much. But if I'd have said those things about me, people are like, he's got a big head. It's always better when somebody else has positive things to say about you. So if you can get someone else to say positive things about you, it's much better than you talking about yourself. Does that help?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. I want to ask you something. I got a little tip from Yarden.
Yeah.
She said that you have a weakness to a very typical Israeli food.
Is she talking about my love of hummus? Yes. Yeah, I absolutely love hummus, and I think it was in like I think it was in the national director contract that if every time I come to Israel I have to have plenty of hummus, and she has always fulfilled that contract perfectly. I love hummus.
So you know, which of the hummuses in Israel do you like best? You know, probably you've tried some of them.
Oh, I've loved many of them. You know, I'm a particularly fan of some spicy hummus, or I love hummus with some garlic in it and olive oil. Pine nuts. I'm a big fan.
Great. So I want to ask Evan, you know, if someone wants to start experiencing networking, you know, like more professionally experiencing networking, you know, what would be your suggestion? What would be, you know, how can they utilize? How can you use BNI for that?
Yeah, well, listen, I would recommend you go visit a BNI chapter and watch them operate. I think, you know, going to see and meet people is really the key. You want to feel comfortable with the people that you're networking with, so you want to go there and make sure that there's a chemistry between you and the other people. So go visit once or twice and make sure that this is a group of people that you feel comfortable working with. It really is about the chemistry. If you don't like the people that you're networking with, you're not going to be able to refer them.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know, what would be like your tip for, you know, visiting the first time a group like that, to, you know, to see if this group is good for you?
Yeah, so there's probably a couple of things that I think are really important. One is, maybe three things that I think are really important. One is process or system. When you go to a group, is it a coffee klatch? Is it very social? Or are they there to do business? Because, look, I don't know about everybody else, but for me, I want to go to a network that's there to do business. On the other hand, is it a mercenary group, or is it a friendly, relationship-based group? So you want processes and system, but you also want relationships. So you want to make sure, and one of the ways to determine whether they're having a good relationship is if you walk out of the meeting and your cheeks hurt from laughing, you know it's a good group because they're having fun. It's about relationships. And so if you see systems and processes and it's not just social and they're having a good time, those two things help to determine that this is a good group. And there's one other thing. Is there a sense of accountability? Do you see accountability play a role in that group? You see, one of the strengths of a network is that most of the members are friends. One of the weaknesses of a network is that most of the members are friends. It is both a strength and a weakness because friends don't like to hold friends accountable. And if you don't have accountability in a network, it's just a social group. So those are the three things I think you want to look for when you're checking out a business networking group. If you're serious about getting business, those are three things you want to look at.
I think there's a very important distinction in what you just said, you know, the distinction between are we here for social purposes or for business purposes, because I've seen, you know, groups from each nature, and it's really different objectives and probably different results.
Yeah, and if it's a social group, great. I have no objection to a social group. I'm for it. But I don't want to confuse that with a business network. That's a social group. I mean, I belong to an organization that is a knowledge network. They share information and ideas and socializing. It literally is both. It's a social group to share knowledge and information. I don't confuse that with a business network. That is not a business network. And so I don't go there just for the business networking, although some of it happens as you build relationships. I go there for the socializing, and I go there for the information and knowledge that I acquire. That's why I go. So if you know what your goal is and it fulfills that goal, then you're in the right place. If your goal is to develop business and go to a business network, don't go to a group that has no accountability and is all social. There are a lot of groups around. I love these groups. I absolutely love these groups. They're competitors to BNI, but I love them because they say we're BNI without the rules. I love groups like that. You know why? Because they fail. They fail. What would be, soccer? Do you call it football or soccer in Israel?
It's a football.
Football. Okay, so football without rules would be boxing. If there were no rules, there'd be fights. There has to be rules. In a sport, there has to be rules. In a network, there has to be rules. And if you want business, you got to follow some policies and procedures and rules, guidelines to help achieve those. So I love the groups who say, we're BNI without the rules, because they almost never make it.
Okay, great. I want maybe to ask you then to join us to give the people instructions how can they join one of the BNI groups here in Israel, as a guest.
Okay, well, first, thank you, Ivan. I love what you're saying, and every time I hear you, I learn some more. Thank you very much. שלום לכולם. לגבי הזמנה, גם איוון אומר שאין כמו לבקר בקבוצה ולראות בעיניים איך אנשים עושים עסקים באווירה חיובית ואווירה עסקית. יש לו משפט מאוד ידוע, I'm quoting you, Ivan, you always said keep the fun with fundamentals. That's what you meant, probably. כך שבאמת זה העניין. אנחנו נשמח אם תיצרו איתנו קשר דרך האתר, ונשמח לתאם עבורכם ביקור במפגש עסקים. במפגש כזה זו הזדמנות באמת להציג את עצמכם בפני כמה עשרות של אנשי עסקים מקומיים, וגם אנשים שאומרים, אני מכיר את כולם בעיר הזאת וכולם מכירים אותי, אני בטוחה מניסיון שיהיו אנשים שם שלא יכירו אתכם ויהיה לכם הזדמנות להציג את עצמכם, ובאמת אין כמו מקום לחשיפה שנותן לכם עוד הזדמנות לדבר על עצמכם. אז נשמח מאוד אם תיצרו איתנו קשר, באמת דרך הצור קשר של אתר BNI ישראל, ונשמח לעזור.
תודה ירדן, אז יש לכם עכשיו גם כל מי שמאזין, יש לכם ממש את הפופ-אפ הזה עם הקישור לאתר של BNI, ותמלאו את הפרטים ויחברו אתכם לקבוצה באזור המגורים שלכם. So Ivan, I want to maybe, kind of like last words, any final thoughts on, for people who are here and, how to be a better networker.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure Yarden probably said this. We would love to have someone visit there in Israel. We have fantastic chapters. Israel is one of our stronger countries. with 56 chapters and a number in the works. So we'd love to have you go visit BNI Israel. I think one of the most important things, Eran, that I've learned in the last 30 years of running the world's largest networking organization is that it's not, you know the expression, it's not what you know, it's who you know?
Yeah.
I believe it's not either what you know or who you know. It's how well you know each other that really counts. You know, I've met people that have an amazing contact list. They've got all these great contacts. Or people on LinkedIn, they've got thousands of connections. That doesn't mean squat. It doesn't mean anything unless you can pick up the phone, call somebody and ask for a favor or ask for some help, and they give it to you. Having the connections alone doesn't matter. I think it's all about building relationships. And I also think it's about building it within the right context. For BNI, I think BNI is not only about it's not only about a great way to get business, it's about having a better way to do business. It's about doing business within the context of our philosophy of giver's gain. This idea that if I help you, you'll help me, we'll all do better as a result of it. I think it's one of the reasons why BNI operates in 60 countries. That concept of trust building transcends our cultural differences. Different people, different places, different races, different religions, different countries, different cultures. We all speak the language of referrals. We all want to do business with people we know and trust. And that's the key to building a powerful personal network.
Wow. I want to thank you, Ivan, so much for this opportunity. If you do come to Israel anytime soon, or again, I will love to take you out to good hummus.
Some hummus, great. All right, I'm there.
So again, it's been a great interview. I know from the comments here from people who are listening, they want to thank you as well. So thank you for the time and best of luck.
Thank you, and thank you, Yardan, for participating, and a big shout out to our mutual friend Moshe, who's helped with this interview.
Yeah, thank you, Moshe.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ivan.
Thanks, Eran.